Hello guys, let's learn about organizing, setting up right buckets. Having a total and seamless system of organization in place gives you tremendous power because it allows your mind to let go of lower level thinking and graduate to intuitive focusing undistracted by matters that haven't been dealt with appropriately. But your physical organization system must be better than your mental one in order for that to happen. Being organized means nothing more or less than where something is matches what it means to you. If you decide you want to keep something as reference and you put it where your reference material needs to be, simply saying, if you decide you want to keep something as reference and you put it where your reference material needs to be, that is organized. If you think you need a reminder about a call you need to make, as long as you put that reminder where you want reminders of phone calls to make, you're organized. As simple as that sounds, it begs a very big question. What does something mean to you? It turns out much of what people are trying to organize has not been clarified as per the previous chapter. And even once it has, there are more refined distinctions that are possible, which will add greater creativity and control for you. I will expand on some of those in this chapter, as I lead you through the organizing steps and tools that will be required as you process your in-tray. As you initially process in, you will create lists and groupings of things you want to organize, and you will invariably think of additional items to include. In other words, your organization system is not something that you will necessarily create all at once in a vacuum. It will evolve as you process your stuff and test out whether you have put everything in the best place for you. It should and will evolve as you do. The core distinctions of what things mean to you will be true forever. But the best structure for you to manage them a year from now may look different than what you come up with dealing with your world today. The outer ring of the workflow diagram shows the main groupings into which things will go as you decide what they are, what needs to be done about them. The basic categories. There are 7 primary types of things that you will want to keep track of and manage from an organizational operational perspective. Number 1, projects list. Number 2, project support material. 3, calendar actions and information. 4, next actions. 5, waiting for list. 6, reference material. 7, someday or maybe list. The importance of hard edges. It's critical that all of these categories be kept pristinely distinct from one another. They each represent a discrete type of agreement we make with ourselves, to be reminded of at a specific time and in a specific way. If they lose their edges and begin to blend, much of the value of organizing will be lost. That is why capturing and clarifying what your relationship to them is specifically is primary to getting organized. Most people try to create more control in their world by just getting organized. They wind up rearranging incomplete inventories of still unclear things. Once you have gone through my previously suggested processes, however, you will have very clear contents of what you need. What you need to track, and a very practical way to sort them and create their descriptors. If you neglect this categorization and allow things of different meanings into the same visual or mental grouping, you will tend to go psychologically numb to the content. If you put reference materials in the same pile as things you still want to read, for example, you will go unconscious to the stack. If you put items on your next actions list that really need to go on the calendar because they have to occur on specific days, then you won't trust your calendar and you'll continually have to reassess your action list. If you have projects that you're not going to be doing anything about for some time, they must go on your someday or maybe. So you can relate to the projects list with the rigorous action generating focus it needs. And if something you're waiting for is included on one of your action lists, non-productive rethinking will continually bog you down. All you really need are lists and folders. Once you know what you need to keep track of, all you really need are lists and folders. Totally sufficient tools for reminders, references, and support materials. Your lists will keep track of projects and someday or maybes, as well as the actions you will need to take on your active open loops. Folders will be required to hold your reference material and the support information for active projects. Lots of people have been making lists for years but have never found the procedure to be particularly effective. There is rampant skepticism about systems as simple as the one I'm recommending now. But most list makers haven't put the appropriate things on their lists or have left them incomplete, which has kept the lists themselves from being very functional for keeping your head clear. Once you know what goes on the lists, however, things get much easier. Then you just need a way to manage them. As I have said, you shouldn't bother to create some external structuring of the priorities on your lists that you will then have to rearrange or rewrite as things change. Attempting to impose such scaffolding has been a big source of frustration in many people's organization. You will be prioritizing more intuitively as you see the whole list against quite a number of shifting variables. The list is just a way for you to keep track of the total inventory of active things to which you have made a commitment, and to have that inventory available for review. When I refer to a list, keep in mind that I mean nothing more than a grouping of items with similar characteristics. A list could look like one of at least three things: a file folder or container with separate paper notes for the items within the category, an actual list on a titled piece of paper, often within a loose leaf organizer or planner, an inventory of items on a list in a software program or in a digital mobile device. Let's go through the organizing action reminders. If you have emptied your in tray, you'll undoubtedly have created a stack of pending reminders for yourself, representing longer than 2-minute actions that cannot be delegated to someone else. You will probably have anywhere from 20 to 60 or 70 or more such items. You will also have accumulated reminders of things that you have handed off to other people, and perhaps some things that need to be placed on your calendar or in a someday or maybe holder. You will want to sort all of this into groupings that make sense to you so you can review them as options for work to do when you have time. You will also want to divide them in the most appropriate way physically to organize those groups, whether as items in folders or on lists, either paper-based or digital. The actions that go on your calendar. For the purposes of organization, as I have said, there are two basic kinds of actions: those that must be done on a certain day and or at a particular time, and those that just need to be done as soon as you can get to them around your other calendar items, like with a final due date. Calendar action items can be either time specific or day specific. As you are processing your inbox tray, you probably came across things that you put right into your calendar as they showed up. You may have realized that the next action on getting a medical checkup, for example, was to call and make the appointment, and so you actually did it when it occurred to you. Writing the appointment on your calendar as you made it would then have been common sense. What many want to do, however, based on perhaps old habits of writing daily to-do lists, is put actions on the calendar that they think they would really like to get done next Monday. But that actually might not, and that might then have to be moved to following days. Resist this impulse. Let me just repeat what I said. What many want to do, however, based on perhaps old habits of writing daily to-do lists, is put actions on the calendar that they think they would really like to get done next Monday, but that actually might not. That might then have to be moved to following days. Resist this impulse. You need to trust your calendar as sacred territory, reflecting the exact hard edges of your day's commitments, which should be noticeable at a glance while you're on the run. That will be much easier if the only things in there are those that you absolutely have to get done or know about on the day. When the calendar is relegated to its proper role in organizing, the majority of the actions that you need to do are left in the category of as soon as possible against all the other things I have to do. Organizing as soon as possible actions by context. Over many years, I have discovered that the best way to be reminded of an as soon as I can action is by the particular context required for that action. That is, either the tool or the location or the situation needed to complete it. For instance, if the action requires a computer, it should go on an at computer list. If your action demands that you be out and moving around in the world, the errands list is the appropriate place to track it. If the next step is to talk about something face to face with your partner, you have to put it into the partner folder. How discrete these categories will need to be will depend on how many actions you actually have to track and how often you change the context within which to do them. If you are that rare person who has only 25 next actions, a single next actions list might suffice. It could include items as diverse as buy nails, talk to boss about staff changes, and draft ideas about committee meeting. If, however, you have 50 or 100 next actions pending, keeping all of those on one big list would make it too difficult to see what you need to see. Each time you got any window of time to do something, you would have to unproductive resorting. If you happen to be on a short break at a conference, during which you might be able to make some calls, you would have to identify the calls among a big batch of unrelated items. When you went out to do odds and ends, you would probably want to pick out your errands and make another list. Another productivity factor that this kind of organization supports is leveraging your energy. When you're in a certain mode, when you're in phone mode, it helps to make a lot of phone calls. Just crank down your calls list. When your computer is up and running and you're cruising along digitally, it is useful to get as much done online as you can without having to shift into another kind of activity. It takes more energy than most people realize to unhook out of one set of behaviors and get into another kind of rhythm and toolset. And obviously, when a key person is sitting in front of you in your office, you would be wise to have all the things you need to talk about with him or her immediately at hand. Over many years, I have discovered that the best way to be reminded of an as soon as I can action, the most common categories of action reminders. You will probably find that at least a few of the following common list headings for next actions will make sense for you. Calls, at computer, errands, at office, at home, anywhere, agendas, read or review. Let's talk about these most common categories. Calls. This is the list of all the phone calls you need to make. You can work off it as long as you have a phone available. The more mobile you are, the more useful you will find it to have one single list of all your calls. Those strange little windows of time that you wind up with when you're offsite, out and about, traveling on a break, or waiting for a plan, or for your kid come out from school, offer perfect opportunity to make use of that list. Having a discrete calls category makes it much easier to focus and intuitively pick the best one to make in the moment. I suggest that you take the time to record the phone number alongside each item. There are many situations in which you would probably make the call if the number was already there in front of you, but not if you had to look it up. And if you're using a mobile device, then only a tap is required to engage. Computer. If you work with a computer, particularly if you move around with a laptop, tablet, or have a computer at work and another at home, it can be helpful to group all those actions that you need to do when it's on and running. This will allow you to see all your options for computer work to do, reminding you of the emails you need to send, the documents you need to draft or edit, and so on. Because I fly a lot, I maintain an online action list separate from my at computer one. When I'm on a plane without a Wi-Fi service, I can't connect to the web or my servers. As many actions require. So instead of having to rethink what I can and can't do, whenever I look at my at computer list, I can trust that none of my at computer actions require that I be connected, which frees my mind to make choices based on other criteria. If you only do at computer work at your office or at your home, you could incorporate those actions on those location specific lists, though you might still find it functional to see reminders of computer work grouped together when you're sitting in that context. On the other hand, if your work and activities are primarily mobile centric and you could be taking actions equally on a laptop, tablet, or smartphone, then parking those reminders on a single digital context list or folding them into the anywhere category might work best. Errands. It makes a lot of sense to group together in one place reminders of all the things you need to do when you're out and about. When you know you need to go somewhere, it's great to be able to look at that list to allow for the option of handling numerous things along the way in one trip. Actions like get stock certificates from bank deposit box, pick up suit at the tailor, and buy flowers for Robin at the florist would all go here. This list could, of course, be nothing more elaborate than a post-it that you keep in your planner or on your refrigerator door, or in an errands category in some digital task manager. It's often helpful to track sub-lists within individual errands items. For instance, as soon as you realize you need something from the hardware store, you might want to make hardware store the list item and then append a sub-list of all the things you want to pick up there as you think of them. On the low-tech end, you could create a hardware store. Post it on the high-tech side. If you were using a digital list, you could attach a note to hardware store on your list and input the details there. At office. If you work in an office, there will be certain things that you can do only there. And a list of those things will be useful to have in front of you. Then, though obviously if you have a phone and a computer in your office, and you have calls and at computer as separate lists, they will be in play as well. I would use an office actions or at office lists for anything that required me being physically present there to take the action, such as purging an office filing cabinet or printing and reviewing a large document with a staff person. At home, many actions can be done only at home, and it makes sense to keep a list specific to that context. I'm sure you've got numerous personal and around the house projects, and often the next thing to do on them is just to do them. Hang new watercolor print, organize travel accessories, and switch closets to winter clothes would be typical items for this grouping. If you have an office at home, as I do, anything that can be done only there goes on the at home list. Similar to people who work at various locations, many people have multiple personal work environments such as vacation homes, boats, and even the local gourmet coffee shop or cafe agendas. Invariably, you will find that many of your next actions need to either occur in a real-time interaction with someone or be brought up in a committee, team, or staff meeting. You have to talk to your partner about an idea for next year. You want to check with your life partner about his schedule for the spring. You need to delegate a task to your assistant that is too complicated to explain in an email. And you must make an announcement at the Monday staff meeting about the change in expense report policies. These next actions should be put on separate agenda lists for each of these people and for that meeting. Professionals who keep a file folder to hold all the things they need to go over with their boss already use a version of this method. If you're conscientious about determining all your next actions, though you may find that you will need somewhere between 3 and 15 of these kinds of lists, I recommend that separate lists be kept for bosses, partners, assistants, and children. You should also keep the same kind of list for your attorney, financial advisor, accountant, and our computer consultant. If you participate in standing meetings, staff meetings, project meetings, board meetings, committee meetings, and so on, they too deserve their own lists. in which you collect things that will need to be addressed on those occasions. Often, you will want to keep a running list of things to go over with someone you will be interacting with only for a limited period of time. For instance, if you have a contractor doing a significant piece of work on your house or property, you can create a list for him for the duration of the project. As you're working around the site after he's left for the day, you may notice several things you need to talk with him about. And you will want that list to be easy to capture and to access as needed. Given the usefulness of this type of list, your system should allow you to add agendas ad hoc, as needed quickly and simply. For example, inserting a page or a list for a person or a meeting with an agenda section or of a loose leaf notebook planner takes only seconds, as does adding a dedicated note within an agenda category in your digital tools. Read or review. You will no doubt have discovered in your entry a number of things for which your next action is to read. I hope you have held to the 2-minute rule and dispatched many of those quick skim items already, tossing, filing, or routing them forward as appropriate. Read printed items that you know will demand more than 2 minutes of your time are usually best managed in a separate physical stack tray labeled as read or review. This is still a list by my definition, but one that is more efficiently dealt with by grouping the documents and magazines themselves in a tray and or portable folder. For many people, the read or review stack can get quite large. That is why it is critical that the pile be reserved only for those longer than 2-minute things that you actually want to read when you have time. That can be daunting enough in itself, but things get seriously out of control and psychologically numbing when the edges of this category are not clearly defined. A pristine delineation will at least make you conscious of the inventory, and if you're like most people, having some type of self-regulating mechanism will help you become more aware of what you want to keep and what you should get rid of. It's practical to have organizing reading material at hand when you're on your way to a meeting that may be starting late, a seminar that may have a window of time when nothing is going on, a dentist appointment that may keep you waiting, or, of course, if you're going to have some time on a train or plane, those are all great opportunities to browse and work through that kind of reading. People who don't have their read or review material organized can waste a lot of time, since life is full of weird little windows when it could be used. Given the amount of digital input we are getting that includes data to read and view, much of which is not really critical to our work or life, but is potentially interesting or fun, it can be useful to create an organizational bucket within that world for such things. So now, organizing waiting for. Like reminders of the actions you need to do, reminders of all the things that you are waiting to get back from or get done by others have to be sorted and grouped. You won't necessarily be tracking discrete action steps here, but more often final deliverables or projects that others are responsible for, such as the tickets you have or ordered from the theater, the scanner that is coming for the office, and so on. When the next action on something is up to someone else, you don't need an action reminder, just a trigger about what you're waiting for and from whom. Your role is to review that list as often as you need to and assess whether you ought to be taking an action, such as checking the status or lighting a fire in some way under the project. For many people, especially those in managerial or supervisory positions, getting this inventory of unfulfilled commitments that we care about from others captured, current, complete, and reviewed creates tremendous relief and improved focus going forward. You will probably find that it works best to keep this waiting for list close at hand, the same system as your next actions reminder list. The responsibility for the next step may bounce back and forth many times before a project is finished. For example, you may need to make a call to a vendor to request a proposal. When the proposal comes in, you have to review it. Once you have gone over it, you send it to your boss for her approval, and so on. It is also very useful to have your waiting for list available when you're meeting with or talking to anyone who might be responsible for any of those deliverables. It is much more elegant to broach a conversation early on, such as, "Oh yeah, how is it going with the Gonzalez proposal?" than to wait until it's overdue and the situation in stress mode. It's important for this category in particular to include the date that each item is requested for each entry, as well as any agreed upon due date. Follow up is much more meaningful when you can say, but I placed the order March 20th. You will get a great feeling when you know that your waiting for list is the complete inventory of everything you care about that other people are supposed to be doing. Using the original item as its own action reminder. The most efficient way to track your action reminders is to add them to lists or folders as they occur to you. The originating trigger won't be needed after you have processed it. You might take notes in the meeting with your boss, but you can toss those after you have pulled out any projects and actions associated with them. While some people try to archive text or voicemails that they still need to do something about, that's not the most effective way to manage what's embedded in them. You might take notes in the meeting with your boss, but you can toss those after you have pulled out any projects and actions associated with them. While some people try to archive texts or voicemails that they still need to do something about, that's not the most effective way to manage the reminders embedded in them. There are some exceptions to this rule. However, certain kinds of input will most efficiently serve as their own reminders of required actions. Rather than your having to write something about them on a list, this is particularly true for some paper-based materials and some email. Managing paper-based workflow. Some things are their own best reminders of work to be done. The category of read review articles, publications, and documents is a good example. It would obviously be overkill to write Review Vogue magazine on some action list when you could just as easily toss the magazine itself into your read or review tray to act as the trigger. Another example, if you are still doing paper-based bill paying, you'll probably find it easier to deal with the bills by paying them all at one time. So you keep them in a folder or stack tray labeled bills to pay. Similarly, receipts for expense reporting should be either dealt with at the time they are generated or kept in their own receipts to process envelope or folder. The specific nature of your work, your input, and your workstation may make it more efficient to organize other categories using only the original document itself. A customer service professional, for instance, may deal with numerous requests that show up in some standard form, and in that case, maintaining a tray or file containing only those actionable items is the best way to manage them. An attorney or accountant may deal with documents they need to spend time reviewing to determine actions which could be stacked in a tray on the desk with items of that specific nature. Whether it makes more sense to write reminders on a list or to use the originating documents in a tray or folder or digital directory will depend to a great extent on logistics. Could you use those reminders somewhere other than at your desk? If so, the portability of the material should be considered. If you couldn't possibly do that work anywhere but at your desk, then managing reminders of it solely at your workstation is the better choice. Whichever option you select, the reminders should be in visibly discrete categories based upon the next action required. If the next action on a service order is to make a call, it should be in a calls group. If the action step is to review information and input into the computer, it should be labeled at computer. Most undermining of the effectiveness of many workflow systems I see is that fact that all the documents of one type are kept in a single tray or file, even though different kinds of actions may be required on each one. One request needs a phone call, another needs data reviewed, and still another is waiting for someone to get back with some information. But they are all sorted together. This arrangement can cause a person's mind to go numb to the stack because of all the decisions that are still pending about the next level of doing. My personal system is highly portable with almost everything kept on lists but I still maintain a read or review stack tray in my office, and the traveling version has a plastic folder with the same title. Though I store and read some magazines digitally, it is still both logistically functional and aesthetically pleasing to me to have the physical version at hand. Managing email-based workflow. Like some paper-based materials, emails that need action are sometimes best as their own reminders. In this case, within the email system itself, this is especially true if you get a lot of email and spend a lot of your work time with your email software are active at hand. Emails that you need to act on may then be stored within the system instead of having their embedded actions written out or distributed on another list. Many people have found it helpful to set up 2 or 3 unique folders on their email navigator bars. True, most folders in email should be used for reference or archived materials, but it's also possible to set up a workable system that will keep your actionable messages discreetly organized outside the inbox area itself. If you choose this route, I recommend that you create one folder for any longer than 2-minute emails that you need to act on. The folder name should begin with a prefix letter or symbol so that it looks different from your reference folders, and it sits at the top of your folders in the navigator bar. Getting email inbox to empty. The method detailed above will enable you to actually get everything out of your email in tray, which will be a huge boon to your clarity about and control of your day-to-day work. You will reclaim in as inbox, so anything residing there will be like a new message in your voicemail or an unread text on your mobile device. Clues that you need to process something. Most people use their email inbox for staging still undecided actionable things, reference, and even trash, a practice that rapidly numbs the mind. They know they have got to reassess everything every time they glance at the screen. Again, getting in empty doesn't mean you have handled everything. It means that you have deleted what you could, filed what you would wanted to keep but don't need to act on, done the less than 2-minute responses, and moved into your reminder folders all the things you're waiting for and all your actionable emails. Now you can open the action file and review the emails that you have determined you need to spend time on. Isn't that process easier to relate to than fumbling through multiple screens, fearing all the while that you may miss something that will blow up on you? A caution about dispersing reminders of your actions. There is an obvious danger in putting reminder of things you need to do somewhere out of sight. The function of an organizing system is primarily to supply the reminders you need to see when you need to see them, so you can trust your choices about what you are doing. Before you leave your office for the day or before you decide to spend a big part of your day doing something previously unplanned, those actionable emails that you still have pending must be reviewed individually, just like your calls and at computer lists. Your paper-based pending workflow must likewise be assessed like a list if the paper material are being used as your only reminders. Distributing action triggers in a folder, on lists, or in an email system is perfectly okay, as long as you review all of the categories to which you have entrusted your triggers equally as required. You don't want things lurking in the recesses of your systems and not being used for their intended purpose, reminding you. The digital world can be dangerous in this regard, because as soon as data is caused many computer-savvy people to revert to a paper planner, its physicality and visual obviousness can create much more trust that their reminders will actually remind them. In order to hang out with friends or take a long, aimless walk and truly have nothing on your mind, you've got to know where all your actionable items are located, what they are, and that they will wait. And you need to be able to do that in a few seconds, not days. Organizing project reminders. Creating and maintaining one list of all your projects That is, again, every commitment or desired outcome that may require more than one action step to complete can be a profound experience. You probably have more of them than you think. If you haven't done so already, I recommend that initially you make a projects list in a very simple format, similar to the ones you have used for your lists of actions. It can be a category in a digital organizer, a page in a loose leaf planner, or even a single file folder labeled projects with either a master list or separate sheets of paper for each one. Number one is projects list. The projects list is not meant to hold plans or details about your projects themselves. Nor should you try to keep it arranged by priority or size or urgency. It's just a comprehensive index of your open loops. You actually won't be working off the projects list during your moment-to-moment activities. For the most part, your calendar action lists and any unexpected tasks that come up will constitute your tactical and immediate focus. Remember, you cannot do a project. You can only do the action steps it requires. Being aware of the horizon represented by your projects, however, is critical for extending your comfort with your control and focus into longer reaches of time. The real value of the projects list lies in the complete review it can provide, ensuring that you have action steps defined for all of your projects and that nothing is slipping through the cracks. A quick glance at this list from time to time will enhance your underlying sense of control. You will also know that you have an inventory available to you whenever it seems advisable to evaluate workloads. The value of a complete projects list. The very broad and simple definition of a project that I have given more than one action needed to achieve a desired result provides an important net capture the more subtle things that pull or push on your consciousness. If you work in an industry that is formally project focused, it may be challenging to realize that look into getting a dog for our kids and find a good trailer or projects. But whether you call them projects or something else, they still demand a certain kind of attention to relieve their pressure on your internal space. Getting the inventory of all those things complete, current, and clear for yourself, and acquiring the habit of maintaining it the way could be one of the most valuable things you do to enable stress-free productivity for yourself from now on. Here are some of the reasons why. Critical for control and focus. Alleviates subtle tensions. Core of the weekly review. Facilitates relationship management. It is impossible to be truly relaxed and in your productive state when things you have told yourself you need to handle continue to pull at your mind, whether they be little or big. It seems that I've got to get my driver's license renewed. It can take up as much space in your head as I need to formulate the agenda for next year's conference, when an external list of such things is not complete and reviewed regularly. Alleviates subtle tensions. The smaller or more subtle things we tell ourselves we need to deal with create some of the more challenging stresses to handle, simply because they are not so much in your face. Projects often don't show up in nice, neat packages. They start as what seems a simple situation, communication, or activity, but they slowly morph into something bigger than you expected. You thought you handled getting your daughter into preschool, but now there is a problem with the registration forms or a change in the logistical details. You thought the invoice you sent was complete and accurate, but now the client says he didn't agree to something you billed him for. Getting these kinds of situations identified and into your system with desired outcomes for appropriate engagement creates a wealth of fresh energy with unexpected positive results. And then, core of the weekly review. As I have indicated in other places, the weekly review is the critical success factor for marrying your larger commitments to your day-to-day activities. And a complete projects list remains the linchpin for that orientation, ensuring weekly that you are okay about what you're doing with the dog for your kids, along with what you're doing about next year's conference, is an essential practice. But that projects list must already be there in at least a somewhat recent form before you have the capability to think about things from that perspective. Facilitates relationship management. Whether you're in conversation with your boss, your staff, your partner, your family, having a sense of control and overview of all of your commitments that may have relevance in your relationships with them is extremely valuable. Invariably, there are challenges with allocating limited resources, your time, your money, your attention, and when others are involved with you in ways that pull on those resources, being able to negotiate those explicit and implicit agreements is the only way to effectively relieve those people inherent pressures. Once executives and spouses and staff people get the picture of the commitments of their work and life, it triggers extremely important and constructive conversation with those involved. But it doesn't happen without that complete list. And where to look for projects still to uncover? There are three primary areas in which you are likely to have hidden projects. Number one, current activities. Often there are projects that need to be captured for a simple inventory of your calendar, your action lists, and your workspaces. What meetings are on your schedule, past or upcoming, because of some outcome you are committed to? And though it should be obvious, but at times isn't. There are proposals or contracts to review in your briefcase, forms to fill out for the bank on your desk at home, or a broken watch in your purse that are actually project artifacts. Double check that you have them all associated with the further and final outcomes instead of remaining workflow orphans. The next is higher horizon interests and commitments. There is a good chance that you might still have subtle attention on some of your commitments and interests from a longer and higher view of your responsibilities, goals, visions, and core values. A review of the accountabilities you're invested in professionally, the things you need to be doing well in your roles at work, and the areas of your life you need to keep up to certain standards will likely trigger some reminders of things that may have been taking some of your attention, for which defining a project about them will be valuable. If you have professional goals, company objectives, and strategic plans, have you identified all the projects that they should engender for you so that you can move on them appropriately? I have seldom had an executive pull out and review any long-range planning document without her realizing there is at least one project she needs to clarify for herself in regard to it. Are there things coming toward you further out in the future of your personal life that have started to pull on your attention to do something about them? Kids, parents growing older, retirement, life partners' aspirations, fun, and creative things you would love to start exploring. This kind of reflection often produces at least some look into kinds of projects that once identified will produce a greater sense of being on top of your bigger world. Current problems, issues, and opportunities. A very rich place from which to gather items for your inventory is the broad area of often amorphous things that can disturb your focus if not recognized and dealt with by shaping them into real projects with action steps. These fall into three categories: problems, process improvements, creative and capacity building opportunities. When is a problem a project? Always. When you assess something as a problem instead of as something to simply be accepted as the way things are, you're assuming there is a potential resolution. Whether there is or not might still need to be determined, but at the very least you have some research to do to find out. Look into improving somebody's relationship, resolving situation with landlord, and building maintenance. When you actually do put words to it, put it on your list and create a next action for it. You will surprise yourself with a new level of elegance in the stress-free productivity game. Invariably, there are also projects lurking amid your administrative, maintenance, and workflow processes in both the professional and personal arenas. What do you find yourself complaining about regarding your systems or simply how things are getting done? Is there anything frustrating about your procedures for filing, storage, communication, hiring, tracking, or record keeping? Does anything need improving in terms of your personal or business expense reporting, banking or investing process, or how you keep in touch with friends and family? These are also the kind of projects that usually become projects slyly. It's tricky to notice when they cross the line between mildly irritating and a real bother that deserves to get done. Finally, there might very well be things you've been telling yourself you'd like to learn or experience. Your own development or creative expression. Would you like to learn Italian cooking or how to draw? Have you been telling yourself it would be great to take an online course in digital photography or social media marketing? It is very possible that many of these kinds of might like to projects would live just fine on your someday or maybe list. But as you gain greater familiarity with the effectiveness of GTD, you will want to take advantage of the methodology to more readily incorporate new, interesting, and useful experiences into your life by defining desired outcomes about them on the projects list. Now you have to make a decision. One list or subdivided. Most people find that one list is the best way to go because it serves as a master inventory rather than as a daily prioritizing guideline. The organizing system merely provides placeholders for all your open loops and options so your mind can more easily make the necessary intuitive moment-to-moment strategic decisions. Frankly, it doesn't matter how many different lists of projects you have, so long as you look at the contents of all of them as often as you need to. For the most part, you will do that in one fell swoop during your weekly review. Some common ways to subsort projects. There are some situations in which it makes good sense to subsort a project list. Let's look at some usual options. Personal or professional. Many people feel more comfortable seeing their lists divided up between personal and professional projects. If you're among them, be advised that your personal list will need to be reviewed as judicially as your professional one, and not just saved for weekends. Many actions on personal things will need to be handled on weekdays, exactly like everything else. And often some of the greatest pressures on professionals stem from the personal aspects of their lives that they are letting slip. Delegated projects. If you are a senior manager or executive, you probably have several projects that you're directly responsible for but have handed off to people who report to you. While you could, of course, put them on your waiting for list, it might make better sense to create projects delegated list to track them. Your task will be simply to review the list regularly enough to ensure that everything on it is moving along appropriately. Specific types of projects. Some people have, as part of their work and lifestyle, several different projects of the same type, which in some instances it may be valuable to group together as a sublist of projects. For example, a corporate trainer or a keynote speaker might maintain a separate category of projects presentations with a chronological listing of all the upcoming events of that nature. These would be projects like the rest, in that they need to be reviewed for actions until they are completed, but it might be helpful to see them all organized on one list in the order they are coming up on the calendar apart from the other projects. If you are a real estate agent, sell consulting services or develop proposals for a relatively small number of prospective clients. In any profession, you will likely find it useful to see all of your outstanding sales relationships in progress in one view. This could be a separate list in a planner or digital application, but to be optimally functional, it would need to be complete and each item regularly reviewed for current actions. Some people like to sort their projects by major areas of focus. Parents tracking those about their children, an entrepreneur dividing projects by the various roles he is fulfilling, and the like. Again, how you decide to group your projects is not nearly as critical as ensuring that your inventory is complete, current, assessed sufficiently to get it off your mind. No matter how you organize it now, you will very likely change your structure as you get more experience using your system and as the nature of your focus shifts in work and life. Then what about sub-projects? Some of your projects will likely have major sub-projects, each of which could in theory be seen as a whole project. If you are moving into a new residence, for instance, and are upgrading or changing much of what is there, You may have a list of actionable items like finalize the patio, upgrade the kitchen, all of this. Do you make all of this one entry on your projects list? Say, finish new home upgrades. Or do you write up each of the sub-projects as an individual line item? Actually, it won't matter. As long as you review all the components of the project as frequently as you need to in order to stay productive. No external tool or organizing format is going to be perfect for sorting both horizontally across and vertically down through all your projects. You will still have to be aware of the whole in some cohesive way. If you make the large project your one listing on your projects list, you will want to keep a list of the sub-projects and or the project plan itself as project support material to be reviewed when you come to that major item. I would recommend doing it this way if big pieces of the project are dependent on other pieces getting done first. In that scenario, you might have sub-projects with no next actions attached to them because they're in a sense waiting for other things to happen before they can move forward. For instance, you might not be able to start on upgrade the kitchen until you have finished assess and upgrade home electrical system, or you can only afford one of your major home projects at a time. So keeping them lined up in order of your priorities would make sense. However, you might be able to proceed on finalize the PDO independent of the other sub-projects. You would therefore want a next action to be continually current on any portion of this larger project that you could make progress on independently. Don't be too concerned about which way is best. If you're not sure, I would vote for putting your big projects on the projects list and holding the sub pieces in your project support material, making sure to include them in your weekly review. That often makes it easier to see the larger field of what's going on in your life from a higher perspective at a glance. But if that arrangement doesn't feel quite right, try including the active and independent sub-projects as separate entries on your master list. There is no perfect system for tracking all your projects and sub-projects the same way. You just need to know you have projects and if they have associated components, where to find the appropriate reminders for them. Alright? Now, what about sub-projects that we have discussed? Let's go ahead and learn about project support material. Project support materials are not project actions and they are not project reminders. They are resources to support your actions and thinking about your projects. Number 1, don't use support material for reminding. Typically, people use stacks of paper, stuffed file folders, and or a plethora of emails and digital documents as reminders that they have got a project and they've got to do something about it. They are essentially making support materials serve as action reminders. The problem is that next actions and waiting for items on these projects have usually not been determined and are psychologically still embedded in the stacks and the files and emails, giving them the aura of just more stuff that repels its unorganizer instead of attracting him or her to action. It delivers an incessant subliminal chant. Do something about me. Decide something about me. Follow up with something about me. When you're on the run, in the heat of the activities of the day, files like that are the last things you will want to pick up and peruse for actions. You will actually go numb to the files and the piles because they don't prompt you to do anything and they simply create more mental noise and emotional anxiety. If you're in this kind of situation, you must first add the project itself to your projects list as a reminder that there is an outcome to be achieved. Then the action steps and waiting for items must be put onto their appropriate action reminder lists. Finally, when it's time to actually do an action, like making a call to someone about the project, you can pull out all the materials you think you might need to have as support during the conversation. To reiterate, you don't want to use the support material as your primary reminders of what to do. That should be relegated to your action lists. If, however, the materials contain project plans and overviews in addition to ad hoc archival and reference information, you may want to keep them a little more visibly accessible than you do the pure reference materials in your filing cabinet or on your computer. These are fine to store support stuff too, as long as you have the discipline to pull out the file drawer or open the computer to the proper directory and files and take a look at the plans every time you do your weekly review. If not, you're better off storing those kinds of project support files in a standing file holder or a separate pending stack tray on your desks or other visually available surface. Those actions would then get delegated or deferred to your action list, and the folder would be refilled until you needed it again for doing the actions or for your next weekly review. Many people who interact with current and prospective clients have attempted to use client folders or a client relationship management software to manage the account. The problem here is that some material is just facts or historical data that needs to be stored as background for when you might be able to use it. And some of what must be tracked are the actions required to move the relationships forward. The latter can be more effectively organized within your action list system. Client information is just that, and it can be folded into general reference file on the client or stored within a client's focused library. But if I need to call a client, I don't want that reminder embedded anywhere but on a calls list. Organizing or ad hoc project thinking. In Chapter 3, I suggested that you will often have ideas that you will want to keep about projects, but that are not necessarily next actions. Those ideas fall into the broad category of project support materials, and maybe anything from a notion about something you might want to do on your next vacation to a clarification of some major components in a project plan. These thoughts could come as you're driving down the freeway, listening to a news story on the radio, or reading a relevant article. What do you do with that kind of material? My recommendation here is that you consider where you are keeping tabs on the project or topic itself, how you might add information to it in that format, and where you might store any more expensive data associated with it. Most professionals will have several options for how to handle project support materials, including attaching notes to a list item, organizing digital information in email and or databases, and maintaining paper-based files and notes in notebooks. Attached notes. Most organizing software allows you to attach a digital note to a list or calendar entry. If you're keeping a projects list within the software, you can go to the project you had a thought about, open or attach a note to it, and type in your idea. This is an excellent way to capture back of the envelope project thinking. If your projects list is paper-based, you can attach a post-it note next to the item on your master list, or if you're a low-tech type, on the items separate sheet. In any case, you will need to remember to look at the attachment when you review your product to make use of the data. Email and software applications. The digital world offers an infinite variety of ways to deal with project thoughts. Emails that might contain good information related to your projects can be held in a dedicated email reference folder labeled accordingly. If you have a large volume of emails related to one project, consider creating two folders. Or some. You may also find it worthwhile, if you don't have one already, to set up a more rigorous kind of digital database for organizing your thinking on a project or topic. An enormous flowering of such tools has happened in this century, from simple and elegant cloud-based note-taking and notebook organizing software that permits infinite customization for how it is used. to group sharing file and project management systems to personal project organizing applications for everything from free-form mind mapping to organizing large writing and research endeavors. Pages in notebooks. Great advantage of paper-based loose-leaf notebooks is that you can dedicate a whole page or group of pages to an individual project. For years, I maintained a mid-sized notebook with a projects list in front and a project support section toward the back, where I always had some blank pages to capture any random thinking or plans and details about projects on my list. Though paper-based personal system components are increasingly giving way to their digital counterparts, the notebook model is a valuable one, supporting a more integrated and multi-level platform for well-oriented thinking. Each of the methods previously described can be effective in organizing project thoughts. The key is that you must consistently look for any action steps inherent in your project notes and review the notes themselves as often as you think it is necessary given the nature of the project. You will also want to clear out many of your notes once they become inactive, unreal, or redundant. To keep the whole system from catching the stale virus, I have found a lot of value in capturing these types of thoughts, more for the way it consistently helps my thinking process than because I end up using every idea. But I try to make sure not to let my old thoughts stay around too long, pretending they're useful when they are not. Organizing non-actionable data. Interestingly, one of the biggest problems with most people's personal management system is that they blend a few actionable things with a large amount of data in material that has value but no action attached. Having good, consistent structures with which to manage the non-actionable items in our work and lives is as important as managing our action and project reminders. When the non-actionable items are not properly managed, they clog up the whole process. Non-actionable items fall into three large categories: reference materials, reminders of things that need no action now but might at later date, and things that you don't need at all. Reference materials. Much of what comes across your desk and into your life in general is reference material. There is no action required, but it's information that you want to keep for a variety of reasons. Your major decisions will be how much to keep, how much room to dedicate to it, what form it should be stored in, and where. Much of that will be a personal or organizational judgment call based upon legal or logistical concerns or personal preferences. The only time you should have attention on your reference material is when you need to change your system in some way because you have too much or too little information given your needs or preferences. The problem most people have psychologically with all that stuff is that it's still stuff. That is, they haven't decided what's actionable and what's not. Once you have made a clean distinction about which is which, and what's left as reference should have no pull or incompletion associated with it. It is just your library. Your only decision then is how big a library you want. When you have fully implemented this action management methodology, you can be as big a pack rat as your space will allow. As I have increased the size of the hard disk on my computer and added an almost infinite backup capability on attached drives and in the cloud, I have kept that much more email in my archives and that many more digital photographs. The more, the merrier. As far as I'm concerned, since increasing the volume of pure reference material adds no psychological weight. The variety of reference systems. Reference material now shows up in many forms, with numerous ways to organize it. What follows is a brief discussion of some of the most common. General reference filing, large category filing, contact managers, libraries, and archives. Someday or maybes. The second thing to deal with in organizing non-actionable items is how to track things that you want to reassess in the future. These could range from a special trip you might want to take one day, to books you might want to read, to projects you might want to tackle in the next fiscal year, to skills and talents you might want to develop. For a full implementation of this model, you will need some sort of back burner or on hold component. There are several ways to stage things for later review, all of which will work to get them off your current radar and your mind. You can put the items on various versions of someday or maybe lists or trigger them on your calendar or in a digital or paper-based tickler system. It is highly likely that if you did a complete mind sweep when you were collecting things from your mental space, you came up with some things you're not sure you want to commit to. Learn Spanish, get Marcia a horse, climb Mount Washington, write a mystery novel, and get a vacation cottage are typical projects that fall into this category. If you haven't already done it, I recommend that you create a someday or maybe list in whatever organizing system you have chosen. Then give yourself permission to populate that list with all the items of that type that have occurred to you so far. You'll probably discover that simply having the list and starting to fill it out will cause you to come up with all kinds of creative ideas. You may also be surprised to find that some of the things you write on the list will actually come to pass almost without you making any conscious effort to make them happen. If you acknowledge the power of the imagination to foster changes in perception and performance, it's easy to see how having a someday or maybe list out in front of your conscious mind could potentially add many wonderful adventures to your life and work. We are likely to seize opportunities when they arise if we have already identified and captured them as a possibility. That has certainly been my own experience. Learning to play the flute and how to sail in the open ocean started in this category for me. In addition to your in tray, there are two rich sources to tap for your someday or maybe list: your creative imagination and your list of current projects. Make an inventory of your creative imaginations. Special categories of someday or maybe. More than likely, you have some special interests that involve lots of possible things to do. It can be fun to collect these on lists. These kinds of lists can be a cross between reference and someday or maybe reference, because you can just collect and add to lists of good wines or restaurants or books, consult as you like. Someday or maybe because you might want to review the listed items on a regular basis to remind yourself to try one or more of them at some point. In any case, this is another great reason to have an organizing system that makes it easy to capture things that may add value and variety and interest to your life, without clogging your mind and workspace with undecided, unfinished business. The danger of hold and review files and piles. Many people have created some sort of hold and review pile or that vaguely fits within the category of someday or maybe. They tell themselves, when I have time, I may like to get to this, and a hold and review file seems a convenient place to put it. I personally don't recommend this particular kind of subsystem because in virtually every case I have come across, the person held but didn't review and there was numbness and resistance about the stack and contents. The value of someday or maybe disappears if you don't put your conscious awareness back onto it with some consistency. Also, there is a big difference between something that's managed well as a someday or maybe list and something that's just a catch-all bucket for stuff. Usually, much of that stuff needs to be tossed. Some of it needs to go into read or review, some needs to be filed as reference, some belongs on the calendar or in a tickler file for review in a month or perhaps at the beginning of a month. Perhaps at the beginning of the next quarter, and some items actually have next actions on them. Many times, after appropriately processing someone's hold and review drawer or file, I've discovered there was nothing left in it. Using the calendar for future options. Your calendar can be a very handy place to park reminders of things you might want to consider doing in the future. One of the three uses of a calendar is for day-specific information. This category can include a number of things, but one of the most creative ways to utilize the calendar function is to enter things that you want to take off your mind and reassess at some later date. Triggers for activating projects, events you might want to participate in, decision catalyst. The tickler file. One elegant way to manage non-actionable items that you may need an action in the future is the tickler file. Alright, it can be essential if you know how to use it. Checklists. Creative and constructive reminders. This is the last part in organization that deserves some attention is the care and feeding of checklists. Those recipes of potential ingredients for projects, work processes and procedures, events and areas of value, interest, responsibility. In essence, any of the list or categories of reminders we have already discussed are checklists, and that they serve the function of providing things to check or review to ensure that you're not missing something in that area. The more common idea of checklists, however, refers to a list of the contents of a topic, procedure, or some arena of interest or activity to be utilized either at specific time whenever you engage in particular kind of activity. These can range from big picture outlines of areas of focus in your job or your life down to the detailed instructions of how to load pictures onto a website. There are an infinite number of possible checklists that allow you to have more relaxed control in various situations across your life and work. So we'll learn how to use it. Things you want to pay attention to. Often, when we are working with people to clear up what is on their minds, what shows up are things like this: exercise more regularly, spend more quality time with my kids, do more proactive planning for my division, maintain good morale on my team, ensure we are in alignment with corporate strategy, keep the client building process up to date, focus more on my spiritual practices, pay more attention to the individual goals of my staff members, keep myself motivated in my job, keep current conversations updates going with key people in my company. What should you do with these fuzzier kinds of internal commitments and areas of attention? Number 1. First, identify inherent projects and action. For much of this kind of stuff, there is still a project and or an action that needs to be defined. Exercise more regularly. It really translates for many people into set up regular exercise program and call Sally for suggestion about gyms and personal trainers. In such cases, inherent projects and actions still need to be clarified and organized into a personal system. Or maintain good morale on my team should become a project with specific action step. But there are some things that don't quite fit into the category, and often appropriate checklists are needed to address them. Blueprinting key areas of work and accountability. Objectives like maintain good physical conditioning or keep my team motivated may still need to be built into some sort of overview. Checklist that will be reviewed regularly. You have multiple layers of outcomes and standards playing on your psyche, and your choices at any point in time, and knowing what those are at all the different levels is always a good idea. I suggested earlier that there are at least 6 levels of your work that could be defined, and that each level deserves its own acknowledgement and evaluation. A complete inventory of everything you hold important and are committed to on each of these levels would represent an awesome checklist. It might include career goals, service, family, relationships, community, health and energy, financial resources, creative expression. And then moving down a level within your job, you might want some reminders of your key areas of responsibility, your staff, your values, and so on. A list of these might contain points like team morale, processes, timelines, staff issues, workload, and so on. All of these items could in turn be included on the lists in your personal system as reminders to your own as needed to keep the ship on course on an even keel. Many times the value is simply to affirm that the specific area is okay, as is nothing needs to be added or changed, but knowing that adds to your relaxed focus. And then, the more novel the situation, the more control required. The degree to which any of us needs to maintain checklists and external controls is directly related to our unfamiliarity with the area of responsibility. If you've been doing what you're doing for a long time and there is no pressure on you to change in that area, you probably need minimal external personal organization to stay on cruise control. You know when things must happen and how to make them happen, and your system is fine, status quo. You could manage those in your sleep. Often, Though that's not the case, did you ever have to go through some prescribed procedure to manage a discrete kind of financial transaction, log in and refresh a software application, or even go through several necessary steps to check into a friend's vacation cabin? Many times you will want some sort of checklist to help you maintain a focus until you're more familiar with what you're doing. If your CEO suddenly disappeared, for example, and you instantly had to fill her shoes, you would need some overview and outlines in front of you for a while to ensure that you had all the mission critical aspects of the job handled. And if you've just been hired into a new position with new responsibilities that are relatively unfamiliar to you, you will want a framework of control and structure, if only for the first few months. As we have instituted a novel organizational structure and operating system in our company, we have been using many critical checklists to support our meeting practices for its implementation until they become automatic. Checklists at all levels. Be open to creating any kind of checklist as the urge strikes you. The possibilities are endless. From core life values to things to take camping, potential holiday gifts, making lists ad hoc as they occur to you is one of the most powerful yet subtlest and simple procedures that you can install in your life. Some of the key things were like job areas of responsibility, exercise regimens, travel checklist, weekly review, training program, key clients, people to stay in touch with, year-end activities, personal development, and a lot more. Jokes. Get comfortable with checklists, both ad hoc and more permanent. Be ready to create and eliminate them as required. Make sure you have an easily accessed place to put a new list that's also attractive and even fun to engage with in a loose leaf notebook or in a software application that is readily available. Appropriately used, checklists can be a tremendous asset in enhancing personal productivity and relieving mental pressure. If in fact you have now captured everything that represents an open loop in your life and work, clarified and processed each one of those items in terms of what it means to you and what actions are required, and organized the results into an intact system that holds a current and complete overview, large and small, of all your present and someday projects, then you're ready for the next step of implementation in the art of stress-free productivity, the reflection process. We're going to learn about reflection in the next lecture. Thank you very much, guys.